Welcome to the Empowered Podcast, episode 38. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Empowered Podcast. I'm your host, Ellery Wells, and I am genuinely glad, happy, and excited that you are here. This is the podcast designed to help you develop, grow, and overcome any challenge that you're facing in your life. I fully, wholeheartedly believe that there's very little that we can face in life and not defeat and tackle and overcome if we have the right friends and family and support systems that I hope you have. Anyway, today's episode features two doctors. Yep, two doctors. And they decided once they got their MDs, their medical doctors. One does surgery on an airplane. It's a pretty cool story, but these two doctors, they decided that they wanted to do something in addition to just being medical doctors. And I say just being medical doctors as if that wasn't enough already. But when we're kids, we think, oh, I want to be a doctor when I grow up, or a fireman, or a pilot, or something like that. And you don't always hear doctors who do something other than being doctors. Maybe they play golf, or they go sailing, or something like that we all, or maybe I'm the only one, but think that's this glamorous thing, and that being a doctor would solve all my problems. I'd have all this money and have all of this purpose in life, saving lives or doing whatever. But my guest today, that's not the case for them. They wanted to do something incredible with their life on top of being a doctor. And I think they really have a really cool story. I'm about to introduce you to Ryan and Allison Gray of MedicalSchoolHQ.net. I met Ryan at New Media Expo early in 2014, if you're listening to this in the future. That was my very first New Media Expo, and Ryan and I met, and I thought he had a pretty cool story. He's got a membership site. We'll talk about that, and just all of the cool stuff that they were doing, and what you might be surprised to hear about some of the resistance that they faced when just trying to get into medical school. Not just resistance, starting a side business, a website, a membership site, a podcast, all those kinds of things, but Ryan faced some pretty big resistance when he was trying to make himself better and get the education that would allow him to be a doctor. So, without further delay, we'll go right into the interview, but before I forget, stick around at the end of this episode, because I have a coupon code for you that will literally save you $200. Let's go right in. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Empowered Podcast. I'm here with Ryan and Allison Gray of Medical School HQ, and they've got a really cool story to share with us today. Ryan, Allison, how are y'all doing this evening?
Doing great.
Doing well, thank you.
No problem. I'm so glad you guys are on the show. I think you have one of the most interesting stories about having a relatively traditional profession. And we'll go into that in just a second. And then you're doing something very untraditional and new media-wise with that. So, Allison, tell the listeners why I think you guys have a pretty cool story. Tell us about the preface, or what do you call it before your name? It's Dr. Allison,
right?
And Dr. Ryan. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So Ryan and I are both practicing physicians. We actually met in medical school in New York, and in 2005, and we're study buddies, and ended up getting married, and the whole thing.
She scoped me out.
I did. No, I saw him and I was hooked. Anyway. So we went about the traditional route of going into residency after medical school. Ryan was actually in the Air Force, so that was a little bit different than sort of the civilian path, if you will. But at some point, once we were out, while I was still a resident and Ryan was now paying the Air Force back as a flight surgeon, he decided, wouldn't it be interesting and great to try to help pre-meds out there with how to get into medical school? He was, and he can share about this, but he was he was talking to airmen in his office who would come in and say, Dr. Gray, how do I get into med school? I really want to go to med school. And he would pull them into his office and talk to them for hours at a time. And this idea was created in his head of, well, why don't Allison and I give back to this community and try to help these people out? Because clearly people are all over the place and are not sure how to get into med school.
And I definitely want to hear that, but I've got to figure out what the heck is a flight surgeon. That's what you said, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
right.
So flight surgeon. So most people, when I say I'm a flight surgeon, the visual that pops into their head,
surgery on
airplanes, kind of like snakes on a plane. But what a flight surgeon is, it's a throwback to a physician in the military. All physicians used to be called surgeons in the military. I don't know why, but that's just what they were called. And for some reason, the term flight surgeon has stuck. I think just because it's a cool name and we're a cool bunch of guys. But what I am is I'm an aerospace medicine specialist, and I take care of pilots and other people that are part of the air crew that work on planes in altitude. So I take care of people who are going to be at altitude who might experience some different things that normal physicians might not be accustomed to.
Anything crazy? I'm completely new. I've never been in the military, know very little about planes, and even less about the medical profession. What kind of interesting things might those be?
So just, was it 3 or 4 weeks ago, I got a call on a Saturday afternoon that there was a cargo plane coming back from Germany with 25 people on board that experienced a rapid decompression, meaning that the pressurization system failed on the plane, and the crew and everybody that was on board was exposed to the low altitude, the cold air, the cold temperatures. And so I had to go to the base. It was me and the fire department and 30 ambulances all lined up, ready to receive this airplane of patients. And what ended up happening was it was all overblown from the get-go, and the plane ended up landing at another base without much fanfare. So it's that kind of stuff.
That sounds much more interesting. I mean, there needs to be a TV show about that instead of Seattle.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't hear. I've never heard a story like that.
It's cool.
Other than with like submarines, and this is going to be completely ridiculous question, but is that kind of decompression like when you gain altitude from being underwater too long?
So, yep, same thing. And that's
interesting.
People that are most exposed are ones that go diving the day before and then go fly the next day.
Interesting. I guess that would make sense. I mean, that's some pretty drastic. I guess it's all altitude, even if you're underwater.
You got it.
Technically. So, and Allison, you're a neurosurgeon, which is pretty interesting as well. My degree's in psychology. I took a lot of neuroscience, and you do stuff with the brain and spinal cord, right? Is that what I understand?
I do. I'm a neurologist, so I'm non-surgical.
Did I say the wrong thing?
No, that's all. It's fine. Lots of people have that question. They ask if I do surgery or not. And we have in medicine, we have neurologists who are diagnosticians, meaning that they diagnose people with different neurological issues, whether it's brain tumors or strokes or seizures, migraines. But then you also have neurosurgeons who are the people who actually go in and operate on these things and take out tumors and try to evacuate blood if somebody's fallen on a ski slope and has a hemorrhage. So I'm non-surgical, which is a good thing because I'm not the most I have, some amount of dexterity, but I don't think you'd want me operating on you because I'm just, not as good spatially as other folks out there. And I just really enjoy kind of the puzzle in terms of meeting a person and trying to figure out what's going on and just that diagnostic puzzle that we encounter on a daily basis. So I like to say that I use my brain, not my hands.
And how long have you guys been out of school?
So not long in a certain sense, feels like just yesterday, but we were in medical school from 2005 through 2009, graduated in May of 2009. And awesome. Then we each went into our internship, which is the first year of residency. And
Okay.
so that training, depending on what field you're in medicine or surgery, that training could be anywhere from 3 years up to 7. So I did 4 years of residency total, and Ryan took a detour because he's been paying the Air Force back. So,
And the reason why I asked that question is what you mentioned before. You decided to turn your knowledge and these other, all these people coming and Ryan asking you, what was the process like? How do I do this? You turned this into the Medical School HQ podcast, and you guys have a membership site. And those are two things. Podcasts, I mean, they're growing, but they're still, you could walk down any street and most people wouldn't have any idea what a podcast is, I would assume. And then a membership site, probably even fewer know what I mean when I say that. Who came up with the idea? And I think, Allison, you might have said that was Ryan. But who came up with the idea, and how has that grown over the last, well, you tell me, a couple years, 6-8 months?
So I think it was March of 2012 when I went out and registered the domain name. And the initial thought was, we have all this information. Let's go ahead and get it out there, make a website, and we'll be done. We'll empty our brains, and so if people ask us a question, we can just refer them to our website, and it'll be real data from real physicians offering real advice. And hey, maybe we can put some Google ads on there and make a couple bucks at the same time. And that turned into having more fun interacting with people emailing us and building the relationships on a deeper level than just having content out there. And that's what grew into the podcast. I was a podcast listener myself, so I enjoyed that format. And so I said, hey, I can do a podcast. Why not? And I went out and bought a microphone and set up in my living room on the dining room table and recorded a couple episodes and didn't do anything with them. And I think it's probably a common story among podcasters.
We've got a couple of those.
Yeah.
They might go out someday.
One day. So they sat there for a long time, and we continued to build written content on the website and continued to kind of put ads on there and interact with people. And
who's the writer?
We both were.
Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of split up the work. But it was tedious. I'm not going to lie. It was a lot of work to figure out what we were going to write about. And I think it's harder for us. The route that we were trying to take was more data-driven stuff, more factual-based stuff, and not, this was my day at work, and here are 3 things that you can learn about why I had a crappy day. It was less of that typical blog content and more data-driven information, and so that was a little bit harder for us to come up with.
But we did have the advantage that we actually had to live apart, which isn't really an advantage, but we had to live apart during part of these last 2 years. Ryan was in Delaware at his first assignment at a base there, and I was in my residency in Boston, and so we both had contracts, and we had to live where we were told to live, and so we would visit each other as often as possible. So on these long train rides or plane rides, we would take the time to actually build content then. So it worked out.
Yeah.
Which one do you prefer, the blog or the podcast?
Oh, since we've started the podcast, we barely do any kind of written stuff.
It becomes, I still like writing, and I wouldn't say it becomes a challenge, but talking to people and doing the podcast, it's pretty fun. Would you agree?
It's just more stimulating for us, more educational for us. It's harder to sit down and write.
And it's more fun engaging with people, just as you said, getting to know people and talk with people.
So there's going to be a lot of people that are listening to this, and they have a skill set. Maybe it's like traditional medicine. My mom, she has the whole alphabet at the end of her name. She's got a PhD in cancer oncology. I think that's what her PhD is. And she teaches. She works at hospitals. She's done all the clinical hours. I doubt she has any desire to do a podcast, but the other person who has all of these years of experience, what would you tell them when they're thinking, I don't know what to do with all of this information that's in my head, excuse me, and they listen to this episode, you have the blog, the podcast, and then I do want to talk about the membership site. Any advice that you'd give to that person?
So I think the question really is, what is your goal? And I'm sure a lot of your listeners know Pat Flynn, and he's a big influence on a lot of us. But his biggest thing is transformation. How do you want to transform your listener, your reader, your community? And I think that's the question. So we went into it knowing that the transformation that we wanted to occur with people that would read our stuff and listen to our podcast was to gain more confidence, gain more insight into what it's like to become a physician. The pre-med path is so cutthroat, and the leading website out there for pre-meds is just riddled with negativity, and that's what we wanted to combat. And so that's the transformation that we went after when we launched the website and now the podcast and the membership site, is transforming members in that way. So if there's somebody out there that has information in their head and they want to lead the next generation of oncology PhDs or psychologists or whatever it may be, and kind of give back to the community the way that we are, then podcasting is a great medium for that. But it all depends on what their goal is.
And I would add too that I think it's really important to find your passion, because I know that Ryan talks all the time about how much he loves his job. He's planning on staying in the Air Force after he finishes his commitment because he loves what he does. And I love what I do. And when Ryan is home, one of his favorite things to do, it's hard to pull him away sometimes, is to work on the podcast and the website, because he's just so passionate about it and he loves it. It just lights him up. And he's really been, I think, the spark, and I've I think gotten a lot of my own passion about this from him, and just how excited he is about all of this. So I think that if you have passion behind what you're trying to create for someone else, and the transformation he's talking about, that will just drive creating your own podcast and your own business.
Very cool. And I'll ask you this later, Allison, but right now, Ryan, you were basically told when you were applying or about to apply to medical school that I don't know exactly your words, but essentially you had very little chance of getting into medical school because you were a white male.
Yeah. My pre-med advisor, I went to a large state school, one of the largest state schools in the country, at the University of Florida. Go Gators. And my pre-med advisor, unfortunately, took a look at me and basically said, "You're a white male. Don't even bother applying to medical school." And it's that is stuck in my head. And when I go on to this other large website, and it's the same kind of negativity of, oh, your grades aren't good enough, or you don't have enough experience, you need to do better, and there's no chance you'll ever get in. It's that negativity that drives me to show people what the options are and what the truth is behind everything. And so I've said, if I can get one person to change their mind after visiting this other website and realize that they can become a physician, and guide them on their path and watch them grow into becoming a doctor, and then I've achieved my goal of helping one person, and that one person is going to go treat thousands of others.
Have you had that one person?
Yeah, a couple of our Academy members, our membership site is the Academy. A couple of our Academy members are now starting medical school in the next couple of months, and so
awesome.
That's our goal has been accomplished, but we continue to strive, and the more people we can get into medical school, the more of a win it is for everybody.
Are you guys tracking like where your students go? Because that's a pretty cool story. I mean, so often, there's podcasts out there that you could listen to, and it's more of a mindset change. There's never really a clear black and white yes or no they achieved this, but you can say, hey, I've helped so and so get into medical school. Are you guys tracking that at all? That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, we should be, yes. We're still early on that it's easy to track it real quick.
I mean, my consulting fee is really small, but that'd be cool. I mean, like 5 years from now, when you guys are on episode like 400, like John Dumas did in the first
3 months.
month,
Yeah.
you can say like we've helped 30 people get into medical school, or 150 people get into medical school, and then when you're elected to the board for for Johns Hopkins or something, Ryan, you can say, yeah, I've helped the next generation of doctors, or Allison, when you're sitting on the board, you can say the same thing. So that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
So tell us about the Academy. So for $27, I think it was, you can get full access to you guys, email. What all do you get for that? I bet I could figure it out. It's medicalschoolhq.net/academy.
You got it.
Oh yeah, I'm good. I'm gonna go there now. What all do you get for your money, and what are the benefits of people joining that?
Sure. So they get access to us, which we think is a big plus. We have a community which is made up of pre-med students who are Academy members or Academites, and we have a community of experts within that community. And those experts include Ryan, myself, and a selection of other physicians who are our friends and colleagues, and also some medical students. So we have a forum there where people can go and ask questions and get answers that are honest. It's also a non-anonymous community, which we think is really important because, again, it takes away that cutthroat sort of competitive nature that exists in other websites. And instead, it's a really collaborative environment where people are sharing resources, trying to help one another. So we have the forum. We also provide monthly office hours where we'll have a group of people meet with us on Fuse, and we answer questions, any questions that they have, no matter where they are in the pre-med process. We also have monthly webinars where we'll bring a guest on and talk about really anything ranging from financial aid and how do you pay for med school to how do you interview properly for medical school. There are so many different things. And we also have every month we'll release a specialty series, which is basically an interview that we'll have with a physician in a certain field of medicine. And that person will talk about what is it actually like to be a dermatologist? When someone says, oh, I want to be a dermatologist someday, well, what does that actually mean in practice? And a lot of students really like that because they get a window into what it's like to be that kind of a doctor.
Do you think you guys, the two of you, get more candid responses than if I asked a dermatologist?
I don't, maybe also just because some of these people are our friends and we know them well. And so they're very, open and honest with us. We're going, mostly to people who we know, who are great people and happy to talk and share the honest truth about what life is like, what the good and the bad. So yeah, I think that they have been generally very, very honest. And that's really important to us too. We want to be providing people with up-to-date and really honest information and telling them the good and the bad in our profession. It's certainly not a perfect field. I mean, every field has its troubles and medicine has its share. So.
And I see one of these is MCAT prep. So I think the math was up here at the top of the page but basically, under $30 a month, that's a lot. It seems like it would be enough to keep you guys busy 24/7.
It could be, definitely.
It tries to. Allison tries to rein me in. I get a little crazy sometimes, and I'll be honest, we bicker sometimes over how much I'm working and how much I could be doing some other stuff. But it's a balancing act. I mean, we both have full-time jobs, and then we come home. We barely watch any TV anymore. So we come home, we have dinner, and then we're typically working, either doing interviews with people or doing office hours or preparing content, whether it's podcasts or videos or whatever it may be. So it's a balancing act, and we're getting there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going through the list, and I'm thinking, man, that would be cool. Like the Meet the Dean series, that'd be interesting outside of the medical thing. But if you're asking, I assume dean meaning people who would judge who gets into medical school, right?
Yeah. So the dean of the medical school
That's cool.
typically doesn't do a lot of the admission stuff, but they have a general oversight of everything about the school. So they're a good person to know.
Yeah. So medicalschoolhq.net/academy. Now I have a question. Ryan, you said, or I think Allison, you said Ryan does a lot of the stuff with the website, and I know there's somebody out there listening to this right now that says, well, that's cool. They're super smart doctors. They know all this stuff about technology. Did you know anything about how the internet worked or WordPress or any before you guys started the blog and podcast?
If you're asking me, the answer is absolutely not.
And what about now then? I mean, are you a pro now?
Oh gosh, no, hardly. I mean, so Ryan, is a very multi-talented individual, and he just, when he picks up on something he likes, he just goes with it and learns absolutely everything possibly he can about it. It's just in his nature. And so he's always been a computer guy anyway, and he would, like, part of what he would do on the side for fun in med school is like build a computer. So he's always been very adept at learning new programs and software and coding and all this stuff. I'm the complete opposite of that. So Ryan's gotten just that much more proficient at all of this stuff and WordPress and all these programs. I've started to learn a little bit, and he'll have me go on different programs and start to use Evernote and WordPress, but I'm certainly more of kind of the content and color commentary, if you will. I'm not an electronic guru at all.
Where did you learn how to do all this stuff, Ryan?
Just self-taught. As Allison said, once I kind of grab onto something, I need to go full steam ahead. And in medical school, my hobby was computer programming, and I actually built software and ended up selling it my intern year to another company that approached me. So when I get interested in something, I have to learn everything about it, and that's just the way I am.
But I think it goes to show you can have a partnership. Like, if there's someone out there like me, it's doable if you can work with someone like Ryan.
It's frustrating sometimes.
More frustrating probably for him because I'm not up to par with him.
There you go. And Ryan, I hear you may or may not have had a pretty nice home theater system at a point in the not so recent past.
Oh yeah, I like toys.
I heard you talking with Jim Munchback on his podcast. I'll find a link and put it in the show notes. But what kind of receiver did you go with?
Oh, I had an Onkyo. But you know what?
Oh, nice.
I've dumbed down everything. I've gotten over all of that stuff, and I just have a nice sound bar now. I don't even have surround.
The simulated surround sound.
Yeah, I like it though.
You're slumming it now.
I know, but it's still a Bose sound bar. It's still not really slumming it, but it's you know what? All that stuff looks good, and it's fun to brag that you got 7.1 surround sound. But at the end of the day, I wanted something that would work easily and sound good enough.
There you go. I think you can get 9.2. Yeah, you can have 2 subwoofers on some of these things right now, or dual zones. I got speakers out on the porch when we bought our house. But I heard that, and a friend of mine, when we were all in college, he had definitive technology speakers. They're super nice, and I like my movies in the surround sound. So
nice.
That caught my ear. So it literally, I guess you could say. So as we normally do on the Empowered podcast, I try to ask people what does the word empower mean to them. I don't know if you guys, of course, would not have the same exact answer, but Allison, you're up first. What does the word empower mean to you?
I think what comes to mind, the word is to create strength, transformation, passion in. So if you're empowering another individual, you're building passion, building strength in that other individual, allowing them to do more, to do great. That's what I think of when I think about empowering another person.
If you're gonna start a hobby like this, I mean, it could. I see it being huge for you guys. But can you do it without passion? Can you do this online business podcast membership site with only having a casual interest, or is it not even worth it?
I think that it's probably possible. I think it probably wouldn't be all that great, because really, if you don't see the transformation yourself and you're not excited about it yourself, how are you going to excite that other person? How are you going to ignite that passion or that interest in them if you can't even really get interested in it? The other thing is time commitment. I mean, Ryan talks about how we watch very little TV and we're just busy all the time, but we really enjoy that. And if we didn't, it would be, like you come home and okay, now here's job number 2. But we don't look at it that way. We both actually legitimately love our jobs, our sort of 9 to 5 jobs, but then we also really love the job we're doing at home. So I think you got to find that passion for yourself too.
Cool. What about you, Ryan? Any thoughts on the word empower?
I think Allison said it exactly right. It's giving information to another to allow them to make their own path.
And do you have a tip for how to empower other people other than starting a podcast to help them achieve their lifelong dream of becoming a doctor?
Yeah, I don't know if a podcast is always number 1 on the list, but it was a good medium for us, and our community has liked it and enjoyed it. But it's just be honest, be open, and I think the more you are yourself, the more people will kind of latch on to that. And I know sometimes I'll share stuff and Allison will look at me like, did you really just say that? Because it can get uncomfortable when you're sharing stuff in the public space, but people realize that. And I've had meetups with some of our Academy members. When we were out in Vegas for NMX, I met an Academy member out there, and we're going to have one next week here in Boston with some members. And it's amazing, the response that you get from somebody else that's been listening to you for almost a year now in a podcast. They're like, wow, I'm meeting you in person, or I'm talking to you on the phone. This is amazing. And it's that kind of passion that just keeps driving us. And
that authenticity too, about just being real with people and letting them know, people say, gosh, you guys are doctors and you seem so normal. It's like, that's what it's supposed to be like. We're just 2 human beings. Yes, we have doctor in front of our name, but we don't think of ourselves as some higher beings. Of course not. We're just, we happen to be in the business of taking care of other people. So, and I also think just there's something really powerful about teaching, providing something where you teach another person a skill that you have or knowledge you have. There's that old little story about the guy who can either give the person who's asking for food some fish, or he can teach him how to fish. And teaching how to fish is what makes the guy be able to have meals for the rest of his life. So I know it's kind of a silly old story, but it really rings true. If you teach another person something, that can stay with them forever and really change their life and their career.
And back on, was it 4 days ago, one of you guys posted on your Facebook page that you just passed 80,000 downloads on the podcast. So that's quite a bit of teaching.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's nothing like Pat Flynn or John Lee Dumas, like you had mentioned earlier, but we have a very small niche, and
not that small.
We're continuing to grow. We have a nice growth curve, and yeah, we have a lot of exciting things on the horizon to let us help more people. So it's awesome.
So I just released an episode with James Kinson, the cash car convert, and in 7 months, he lives up in the Dallas area. He has gone from not having a blog, podcast, or anything to possibly being on a television network, a show in the Dallas area. How would you say that your lives are different? I don't usually ask this question, but seeing this ridiculous growth curve of downloads and having just finished that one with James, how is your life different after starting the podcast and the website?
I can answer that.
You can?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think that we're more fulfilled. I think that before we started on this endeavor, we would have that more kind of traditional, well, okay, you go to work and you come home and then you hang around and watch TV for a few hours and you feel kind of blah, and then you go to bed and wake up and do it again. And I think that this whole project, this whole business has really ignited just so much excitement for both of us, and we really enjoy what we're doing, and we feel like we're changing lives and giving back to our community. So I know for a fact that Ryan seems more fulfilled in life, and I do too, and it's fun. It's a different kind of, it's another thing that we've added to our relationship too on a more personal level, to just to enjoy working on this together. Ryan always used to say he would never want to work with me at work, which is kind of ironic because now we work together all the time on this, but it works out.
How would you answer that question, Ryan?
What was the question again? How's life changed?
Yeah, it's just, life impact type questions. No big. That's a softball.
Yeah, you know what? I think Allison nailed it. It's just when we used to come home from work, it's just like, what's on TV? What movies can we watch? How can we waste a couple of hours until we go to bed? And that's never really been something that I've enjoyed doing anyway. As I told you, during medical school, when we have no time, I found time to write computer software. I've always been one to build something.
Literally in our living room, he tried to do a construction project, like where he was like cutting wood. I had to put my foot down.
Yeah. What were you building?
What was I building?
I don't know. It was something in our tiny little apartment in New York in medical school. He was doing a woodworking project.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Well, it's New York. Where else would he do it?
Exactly.
I told him, wait till we have a garage.
Yeah, I don't remember what I was going to build, but you know what? I like building things, and this was kind of a natural extension of that, where I can teach. I love teaching, as Allison said, and we built a community here, and we're continuing to build it, and we're just having a blast doing it. And I've been asked to speak at different conferences, pre-med conferences, and so it's cool. I thoroughly enjoy it.
So do you guys have a garage now in Boston, or
we do?
We do, but now awesome. I don't have time to do any projects.
And that brings me to a question that I've been wanting to ask the two of you. Doctors are not usually known for taking it easily. It's always how many hours, doing the rounds, all these kinds of things. How did you find time to do all of this? Because I know another objection from somebody listening to this right now is, well, I don't have time for this. How did you guys find time to start all of this stuff and have 80,000 downloads and get people into medical school? Where'd you find the time?
So part of that goes back to what Allison said earlier. The first couple of years of our marriage, we were separated, unfortunately. Geographically separated because of the Air Force and her job. And so when I would get home from work at 4:30 or 5 o'clock, I was home alone with nothing to do. So there was time there. But now for the last year and a half, we've been living together, and we get the first year or so of that was Allison finishing her residency, and she was still working 80 hours a week. And so again, I would get home at 4:30 or 5, and she would get home at 8 or 9. So I'd have some time to work on stuff. But you know what? It all comes down
construction projects.
Yeah, construction projects. It all comes down to wanting to change and make a difference and build whatever you're passionate about. And so what we've had to do, we'll get into funks where we don't accomplish a lot other than consistently releasing our podcast, which we've done now for 67 straight weeks. But
wow.
It comes down to sitting down and talking about what our goals are for the next day, for the next week, and putting it on a calendar. And we have found that doing that is what keeps us going. If we don't do that, then we'll kind of get into a funk where we're kind of sitting around doing nothing. But you have to schedule what you want to do, or else it won't get done.
And I think it's a learning point for me in all of this has been realizing just how many more hours are in a day than you even think about. Because if you think about, okay, well, I drive home from work, maybe I stop at the grocery store, and then, I only have a couple hours before I have to go to bed. But when you actually think about it, yesterday we got so much work done after getting home from work. And I looked at the clock and I said, God, it's only 7:30. I mean, if you actually look at your calendar and build and just schedule things. You'll be surprised, I think, because I was, about how much extra time you actually have that you don't even realize. So you really have a lot more time on your hands, even in your free time, that can be used for such more enjoyable and productive things rather than the usual, which most Americans do, which is watching TV.
Yeah.
Was there a particular place that you found, hey, if we just eliminate this one thing, it frees up, a bunch of hours? Was there one thing, or is it a bunch of little bitty things?
A lot of little things, but I think the biggest thing is TV. Just I set a rule at some point, maybe a year ago. I said, whatever TV that we watch right now, and when I say we, I mean me, because Allison still watches a little bit more than me, but whatever TV shows that I'm watching right now, I'm not watching anything new. So if a new series starts that looks awesome and on Fox, my favorite network, then too bad, I'm not going to watch it. And whenever the shows ends that I'm currently watching, I'm going to stop watching that show, and I'm not going to replace it with anything new. So right now I'm down to like 4 shows maybe. So
what are you watching?
Oh, so that's a good question. I'm watching The Walking Dead.
Mm.
I watch Shark Tank.
Mm.
I watch Modern Family for a little humor.
Here you go.
Big Bang Theory.
Gotta love nerd humor.
Yes.
And Covert Affairs I like. Piper Paraboo's my little crush.
Is that a new show, or is that a Netflix one?
No, that's been out for a couple of years now. It's on USA Network.
I think that's the only one on that list that I haven't seen.
Yeah, it's a good one. But then there were shows that Weeds, Breaking Bad, Dexter, those were all top of the line shows that I used to watch that are no longer out, and so I stopped watching.
And I will watch Game of Thrones because I love it. Ryan doesn't like that show. And I have some guilty pleasures, which I won't mention because it's probably embarrassing that I watch them. But really,
hey, you opened the door. You could
well.
have just said Game of Thrones and that's it.
I watch Revenge, which I know is total trash.
My wife likes that show.
And I watched, this one's even worse, and I watched Vampire Diaries. I loved Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That was my show. I loved it. So Vampire Diaries is not bad, but it's I'm too old to watch it. So, but
are you a Joss Whedon fan or just a Buffy?
Yeah, I love Joss Whedon. Love the guy.
What about you, Ryan? Do you know who we're talking about, Joss Whedon?
I know the name.
What? Know the name?
Yeah, I know the name.
That's terrible.
Were y'all Firefly fans?
Oh yeah, definitely.
No.
There may or may not be a podcast episode with where nobody actually tweeted it to me, but it had to do with me, Nathan Fillion, and hashtag man crush.
That's awesome.
I mean, he might have that man crush on me. I don't know because nobody sent that tweet out. Or it might have been me. Anyway.
Yeah.
So how do you guys unwind and relax? You got all these hours at the hospital, all these hours doing medical school HQ. What do you do to unwind and relax? Maybe it's just watch TV, but what else?
We do love movies. And Ryan, of course, is a Gator, and so we follow the Gators very much. Football, basketball, anything Gator, but those are the big ones. And what else? We like to go shopping, go to the mall. What else do we do? We like to, take day trips. We just went this last weekend to Rockport for a couple nights just to get away. And we also both love to be active. So Ryan was a personal trainer before going to medical school. And so actually that's sort of how we started bonding in med school. We went to the gym together. So we like to run and do other things. We haven't been running so much recently, partly because I'm expecting and it's been super cold outside.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. But yeah, we both really love to be active.
What are you expecting?
Very funny.
You to clean up your construction project.
Yeah.
I also I love music. I played the piano growing up and dance as well. Ryan was more of the athlete. He had the hand-eye coordination. I was more of the artistic one. So we
Do you know who Paul Cardall is?
Oh, I don't. That name sounds familiar, but I don't think so.
He is an amazing piano player. I had him on my show. He was born with a congenital heart defect.
Really?
And my wife, Ashley, who Ryan met, she does echocardiography.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll give you the link here when I find it, but Paul's music is just absolutely fabulous. If you go, even if you don't listen to the episode, if you like just piano music, I've got a YouTube video where he's playing a song called Scarborough Fair.
Oh, I'd love to hear that. Absolutely.
It is, you can go to empoweredpodcast.com/EP22 and it'll take you there. And I had been listening to his music for a long time and didn't know his name. And Jared Easley had him on his show, and I was listening to it, and I was like, oh, I'll go check him out. He plays the piano. I like piano music. Turns out I'd been listening to him for years and didn't know it.
That's awesome.
And on a show talking about overcoming challenges, I don't really get much more of a challenge than being born with only half of a heart. So glad to have had him on the show. So.
Yeah, I will definitely listen to that. That's awesome.
And I had another great question for Ryan. I got to figure out what it was. Ryan, how do you unwind and relax? Get the hammer and nails out.
I go to sleep. Really, I can be working up until I go to sleep. So, I enjoy reading, which is something relatively new, and I think I attribute a lot of what I do and a lot of the transformation in my life to reading. I never used to read before, the Kindle, and once the Kindle came out, I read voraciously. I read voraciously now, whereas before, every time I opened a book, including in medical school, I would fall asleep, and that's why I had Allison as my study buddy, so she could wake me up. There was something about a physical textbook that put me to sleep, and I think it's just the psychological effect of turning a millimeter of a page at a time versus having a Kindle where it's just kind of a fun toy and you can just keep swiping and swiping and swiping to the next page. But so I read probably not as much as I used to, but I listen to audiobooks a lot to do that. And then podcasts while I'm at the gym or in my car ride. I listen to a bunch of different podcasts. So.
And I remember now what question it was, and realized also that I asked you that question twice. So sorry about that. My random question was, who got better grades? You said you were study buddies.
Ouch. In undergrad.
Oh, but this isn't fair.
Okay.
In undergrad, she's gonna blame the school.
Without a doubt.
She went to school in Canada, but I had better grades.
Is that real?
Undergrad.
Yeah, I went to McGill, exactly.
Yeah.
Harvard of Canada.
Yeah. She did much better than me in medical school. I had taken 3 years off between undergrad and medical school, and I had kind of lost my way as far as being a student. And so it took me a long time to get back into that routine. And so she did very well. She was what we call AOA, Alpha Omega Alpha, which is the honor society for medical schools. And yeah.
But we really helped each other. You know, we studied together for hours and hours. I mean, I wish we had counted the number of hours and the number of Diet Cokes that we drank. But we wouldn't study together. We just study across from each other, and it was really helpful. It's also what we teach people about, you know, again, just collaboration, making sure you're working with somebody, and because it's a long journey, long road.
If you don't have like a 4.0 and you don't have perfect grades, can you get into medical school?
Yes.
You definitely can. That's part of what we try to show people.
There you go. And that's why people need to listen to the podcast
Yes.
and become a member of the academy right there. What was the last movie you guys saw?
Oh, we just watched Gravity, actually.
Oh yeah.
It
Very
was a
good.
Great movie.
Did you take your blood pressure before and after the movie? That's pretty intense.
It was a great
was.
movie, yeah. I would love to go to space. I see some astronauts, or people that are applying to be astronauts in my job, and so I would love to be an astronaut flight surgeon.
That
That'd
would
be
make
cool.
his wife nervous, but that's okay.
I was gonna say, Allison, would you go with him?
Oh,
Probably
man.
not then.
I tell him I support him from the ground. He also has his private pilot's license, so he's taken me up in a little Cessna plane, which is awesome too. But he's, you know, I think it's awesome, all the stuff that he gets to do on a daily basis. He's flown in an F-16. I mean, just wild stuff. But space freaks me out because, you know, they're kind of far away, and you can't really Skype in the same way, as far as I know.
No Skype. There you go. Would you, if they were taking a lottery, and my wife and I had a conversation about this, and I know our answers were very different. But if they were doing some sort of lottery, we were able to colonize Mars. Ryan, would you go if you could bring Allison with you?
Ooh, how fast are the internet speeds?
I don't know. I wasn't prepared for that question.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm that adventurous. I think it would be cool, but I like a lot of the creature comforts here at home.
I just think that would, I mean, nobody's done that before, and what kind of crazy adventure that would be. But then, at the same time, like after 2 weeks of being on a spaceship or something, you might be just ready to not be there anymore.
Exactly.
A long way home.
Well, yeah, among other things. So I'll ask Ryan this question first. Ryan, what is one tip or piece of advice that you can give somebody who is maybe on the brink of starting a blog, a podcast, doing something different, just anything outside of the mainstream, any tip that you could give that person?
Just do it. Really, just do it. The hardest thing for me, and I'm sure it's for the majority of people out there, is looking at a task and seeing the end goal as the successful completion of that goal. And what I've had to come to realize through all of this, and I still struggle with it, and Allison will knock me upside the head when I'm kind of down in the dumps because I'm not accomplishing as much as I want to. Every little step along the way is a success towards that goal. And so for somebody out there that's wanting to start a blog or wanting to start a podcast, that's the end goal. What baby steps do you need to do along that path to accomplish that goal? And so if it's going out and researching domain names tomorrow, and then the day after that, going through all the domain names that you selected, and then the next day after that, pick one and register it. That's successful. And so just go out there and start and break down exactly what you need to do and figure out what the next tangible thing is that you can do, and then do it.
What about you, Allison? What would you suggest?
I love that answer. And I would say just jump in with 2 feet. Don't be afraid. And I think we're privileged to live in an era. And when I think about like our parents and our grandparents, we're privileged right now to live in an era in which you can do something new and creative and the world instantly knows about it because it was a YouTube hit or you had a really successful blog or something. And so I think people are excited, this day and age about new and different. So if you're out there with a new concept and you're on the brink of wanting to develop it and bring it to the world, just jump in with both feet and dare to be different, because I bet you that people will receive it well. It's a great time to be living in this world.
Dare to be different. That's perfect. Well, guys, thank you for coming on the show and hanging out with me. If someone wanted to connect with you guys, where can I send them?
MedicalSchoolHQ.net.
Perfect. Well, I will put that in the show notes. Again, thank you for your time. It's been great chatting with you. And Ryan, great meeting you in Las Vegas. Maybe, Allison, you'll be able to come next year.
That would be awesome. And thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
I think my favorite quote from this episode is when I think it was Ryan that said, "Be honest, be open. The more you are yourself, the more people will latch onto that." And it's always been a struggle for me because I'm kind of a crazy dude sometimes. I'm kind of a nerd. You probably, if you've listened to several episodes of the show or read my blog for any time, I like video games, I like sci-fi, all the typical, well, most of the typical nerd stuff, probably not all of it, but like I said, sometimes, being myself is hard to do, and I think a lot of people hide maybe their true nature or parts of their personality because they think that they won't be accepted. And I know I've felt that way several times in my life, and even over the last couple of years, you tone it down to fit in or whatever. But I really love that quote. The more you are yourself, the more people will latch on to that. And I think that's true. And the more I for the most part, the more I am myself, the crazy, goofy kind of guy, the more people relate to me. And I want to encourage you to do the same thing, is to really be yourself. And as Oscar Wilde says, be true to yourself because everybody else, or be yourself because everybody else is taken. I think that's the quote, but you get the idea. Be yourself. You can't be anybody else. And I think this was maybe Nancy Reagan. If you know this quote, correct me, because I want to make sure I know it for the next time I mention it. But it says, it's better to, I forget the quote now. It's about being yourself. Better to be, I wish I could say, better to be yourself. I apologize. I should have looked this quote up before, but better to be yourself than to try to be somebody else and not be good at it. Better to fail at being yourself than fail at being somebody else, and then you're not happy in the end anyway. Like I promised, I wanted to give you a coupon code to save you $200. As you heard me mention on last week's show, and if you don't follow me on social media, you should, by the way, but if you don't, I want to make sure that you hear this offer from me. I am starting in a few weeks on July 1st. I'm starting a course to show you exactly every single step that you need to take to build an online business. I want to walk you through WordPress. I want to walk you through plugins. I want to talk to you about Google and social media and the correct legal ways to set up your online business. We're going to talk about setting up a product, doing the digital distribution part, and getting it all over the world. If that doesn't make any sense to you, that's all right. I can teach you all of the tools that you need. What you need to have is an idea. And I think you probably do. If you're listening to this podcast, it's probably not your first podcast. I've had 37 others. And you probably listen to other podcasts in addition to my own. I'm willing to bet that you have a fantastic idea that you're sitting on. Now, all you need to do is get out of your head and do something with it. And I'm excited, I will be very excited to hear about your idea and help you share it with the world. Go over to empoweredpodcast.com/expertise, EXPERTISE, empoweredpodcast.com/expertise, and sign up for my class. Now here's where it gets exciting, and I'll save you $200. In the spot for you where you can type in a coupon code, type in the word awesome. Yep, just the word awesome. AWESOME, and it'll take $200 off of the price of the course. Now, I've been told I should be charging way more than I am, and I probably agree, but it's hard for me to, as an entrepreneur, to price my products that way. I've been told I should charge $1,200. I was told I should charge $997. When I told somebody that it was going to be $249, they looked at me like I was going to be stupid. Or I was stupid. Not going to be. But right now the price is $497. $200 off if you use the coupon code AWESOME at empoweredpodcast.com/expertise. It's a heck of a deal. 4 weeks. I will show you every single thing that I can and know about starting an online business. No need to pay these third-party programs, $5 a month, $10 a month, $30 a month, or a percentage of your business, because I'll show you how to do it for free. Now, I'll just leave it at that, because I want you to join me. I want to be part of you changing the world with your message. I'm excited for you because we're right here at this opportunity to change our lives forever. empoweredpodcast.com/expertise will take you right there. Coupon code AWESOME will take $200 off the price of the class. It's just for the Empowered Podcast listeners right now, so go ahead and take advantage of that. There are only 5 coupons available. I set it to where there's only going to be 5, so go and do that right now. As soon as you get to work, if you're sitting at a stoplight, go ahead and do it. Don't wait, because there are only 5 of those coupons available. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Empowered Podcast. I am so glad that we've made it to episode 38. My name is Ellery Wells. You can find me at empoweredpodcast.com or ellerywells.com. Reach out, say hello on Facebook or Twitter, or if you want to go to empoweredpodcast.com/iTunes, leave me a rating and review. I can't wait to talk to you next time. I've got a fantastic guest all lined up. We'll see you then.